Hello, good morning. This is Dr. Iftikhar Ansari, Department of Political Science, Aligarh Muslim University, AMU. Now, in this video, I'll be talking about totalitarian state. And totalitarian state, the term which has come into popularity and which has come into vogue, what are its features, how it evolved, and what are its main characteristics? That is what we are going to talk about and discuss. Now, a few years ago, the word totalitarian itself was unknown. I mean, a few decades ago, if we see, the popular use of the term has its origin in Mussolini's famous article on fascist doctrine, and Mussolini probably took the expression totalitarianism or totalitarian from Hegel's philosophy of law, where the word is used to characterize the organic unity of the people. So, liberalism, wrote Mussolini, saying that negates the state in the interest of the single individual. Whereas the kind of state that he was promoting, the fascist, it affirms the state as the true reality of the individual. Now, it is for the only freedom which can seriously be considered, the freedom of the state and the individual within the state. So, because of this fascist, everything is in the state. Outside of the state, nothing legal or spiritual can exist or still less be of value. In this sense, fascism becomes totalitarianism. So, if we talk about understanding totalitarianism, we need to understand in response or in contrast to the modern democracies. Now, it is of central importance for understanding this whole system of totalitarianism in our times not to identify them with non-democratic or even with non-liberal regimes. So the assumption that totalitarianism state is alternative of modern democracy is erroneous. It's wrong completely. So modern democracies, if we try to analyze its basic structure, we find the system are institutionally characterized by a combination of two elements. First, the government must be based on consent of the government, consent of the governed, I beg your pardon. Now, this view is expressed by the institution of universal suffrage. Secondly, there are individual rights which have to be respected and protected by the state. So today, modern democracies stress not only government by the people, but government for the rights of individuals and of social groups. So without respect for these individual rights, it would not be possible to determine especially the relations between a government and governed. So totalitarianism is an all-encompassing system of political rule that is typically established by pervasive ideological manipulation and open terror and brutality. Now, it differs from autocracy, it differs from authoritarianism and traditional dictatorship in that it seeks total power through the politicization of every aspect of social and personal existence. Now, totalitarianism thus implies the outright abolition of civil society, the abolition of private. So, fascism and communism have sometimes been seen as left and right wing or the forms of totalitarianisms. Now, based on their rejection of toleration, pluralism, and the open society. So, talking about the nature of totalitarianism, we find that it is basically a controversial aspect. The height of its popularity came during the Cold War period when it was used to draw the attention to parallels between fascist and communist regimes. Now, this term was used and popularized at the time. So, it was highlighting the brutal feeling of both, that is, the fascism in Italy and Nazism in Germany. As such, it became a vehicle for expressing anti-communist views and in particular hostility towards the Soviet Union erstwhile. So nevertheless, totalitarianism remains a useful concept for the analysis of fascism, and generic fascism tends towards totalitarianism in at least three respects, or let's say two respects: in the extreme collectivism that lies at the heart of fascist ideology, and the goal of its creation, and the creation of a fascist man. And fascist man is the one who is loyal, dedicated, and completely obedient. So totalitarian state claims jurisdiction over the whole of man's life. No part of the individual's life is outside its detailed supervision and control. Now, if Bible teaches that we live, move, and have our being in God, totalitarianism teaches that we live, move, and have our being in the state. So according to totalitarianism, individual's life is not his own. It is a trust given to him by the state to be used in the service of the state. So, in the words of Mussolini, if the 19th century was an age of socialism, liberalism, and democracy, the 20th century is to be the century of authority, collectivism, and the totalitarian state. So, according to totalitarianism, the state is all in all, is an omnipotent, infallible, in the words of Mussolini, beyond the state, there is nothing. So, state is an absolute in comparison with all individuals and groups, which are only relative. So it's an absolute, permanent, and supernaturally sanctioned institution. Mussolini's motto to the Italian people is that all within the state, none outside the state, none against the state. So when we talk about the meaning of totalitarianism, we need to see the definition that was given by Foreign Policy Association of America, that the totalitarian state is it's a pluralism of the modern democratic state, where the government is only one of the several groups which have, for the individual's alliance, in the individual's allegiance, fascism has substituted the word totalitarian state, which embraces all the activities of individuals and subordinates them to the national end. So, a high Italian official defined totalitarian state as a state of truly sovereign authority, which dominates all the forces of the country's totalitarianism, assiduously cultivates state worship. So, according to its teaching, the individual is to attain significance only by his service to the state and is to find complete self-fulfillment in this service. So, the state of this kind is thus an unlimited state. It does not, it does violate and does a violence to the richness and variety of voluntary groups, their life, their religion, their moral, education, they are all subordinate to the state. In Italy, where one of the forms emerged, even sporting, educational, and recreational associations were centralized in fascists' hands. Now, a Nazi theorist, he wrote that the nation enjoys a direct and very deep unity in God, and Germany is the kingdom of God. So the aim of totalitarianism is to obliterate the fundamental distinction between the state and society and make the state omnicompetent. So totalitarianism assumes different forms in different countries. It assumed the form of fascism in Italy and Nazism in Germany. Now, we also need to differentiate totalitarianism with authoritarianism and absolutism to see like what form it has and its nature. So differing from liberal type, the totalitarian regime does not recognize any organized limitation of political regime and power on it. And differing from authoritarian type, it does not recognize a transmission of holders of authority by hereditary or by traditionalistic rules. So these differences are basic to the very specific feature of totalitarian regimes that we are talking about. First is that there is a specific ruling group. Now, this specific ruling group, it differs from the aristocratic and liberal literates and liberal elites in not being determined as a hereditary or economic group. Now, this group is an artificially organized unity under a leadership and hierarchy which were originally recognized in a free, voluntary manner by the acceptance of such platform where people enroll themselves. So this group does not dissolve after the conquest of power, but it exists and it uses that existing administrative and political mechanisms and institutions as its instruments for its own survival and own growth. So the instrumental relationship between the one party and the machinery of the state is a specific problem of this totalitarian state. Now, secondly, what we find their method and mission is that the unity and the dominating function of this group which comes to power, it presupposes a specific absolute belief in its mission. The old social and traditional justification of the ruling group here is replaced by a political world outlook. Now, this political world outlook is what something they come to acquire and raise it to the level of a religion. So they demonstrate the necessity of the domination of the one party or exclude as a social and political possibility of circulation of different groups as holders of power. Now, this political religion which they promote, they may have the most different dogmas. Like the Communist Party appears as the necessary instrument for the realization of social paradise in erstwhile USSR, and the National Social Party is the elite of the German people, now which is by its very essence was destined to have a dominant position. So such dogmas are created and imagined and entrusted on the minds of the people. So the most important function of the political religion consists in the justification of the elite. Now the political religion which they promote, finally, it justifies their rule, their own elite that who were manning that the different institutions which they have come to acquire, and its unlimited power. So the political religion substitutes for the discussion of the objective correctness of the action of the legislature, the appeal to authority. Now, this political religion is what is considered as ultimate and final truth. No sort of discussion was allowed, no correctness was to be judged against it, and what it was saying was final. So a decision made by, let's say, Hitler or Stalin or Mussolini or their leader proves in itself that this decision is right for that matter. It needs no further discussion. Then the political religion which they promote, and the existence of this political religion is connected with the production of public opinion from above. So this public opinion is not the process of moving from down to up, it is being thrust upon the masses from above. So public opinion has to prove the correctness and the power of the public religion by acclamation of its bearers. So those who are propagating bearing, they have to have their affiliation from those who are propagating it from above. So the political religion of the totalitarian state is different from the political religion in absolutist regime by being not only the worship of one person or one dynasty, but at the same time the worship of the mass represented by leading elite or the leading leader. So the passive exterior acceptance of authority is not sufficient here, but it has to be completely interior assent in is necessary. So totalitarian state knows the individual only as an instrument of the state, as a completely submerged part of the national or social community, and a mouthpiece of the political religion. Now here, the production and the continuous approval of the political religion, that is the obligatory world outlook, presumes a concentration and diffusion of power. Now that is something without any precedent in history, that excludes identification of the totalitarian state with an organic state, and it recognizes independent rights of groups and social entities, the most important of which is the family. So the corporations of totalitarian state are only instrument of power and of control, and all direct instruments and means of power are in the hands of the state, and most exactly in the hands of the movement dominating the state. So not only direct instrument of power are used, but also all indirect possibilities or all potentials are exploited and calculated as means to increase and to intensify the power. So the old absolutist state knew the negative role of the public opinion by censorship and suppression of political or opposition or their groups. So these negative means are not only organized by the totalitarian regime in the most complete and systematic manner, but also combined with the means of positive regulation. Now here, education and all possible means to influence the people are taken over by the state and totalitarian movement. And one should note that the concept of education and influence on the people are expanded in concepts without any limit. So totalitarian state is a repudiation of reason and glorification of instinct and impulses. Now this was particularly true in fascist Italy and Nazi Germany. The theory of the state developed in those countries was anti-intellectual. Instinct and will were given priority over reason. In the Western world, as a whole, of the concept of man as made in the image and likeness of God is declined. So totalitarian state is dictatorial in character. It is opposed to liberalism and to parliamentary government. and parliamentary democracy is anathema to totalitarian state. It is criticized for being stupid, corrupt, and slow moving. Parliamentarians are looked down upon as mere talking shops and incapable of accomplishing results. And at times of emergency, they're absolutely helpless. Now, according to a fascist apologist, democracy is a decaying corpse, and totalitarianism believes in the gospel of direct action. Now, yet it is not autocracy, pure and simple. It combines the autocratic principles of government by a privileged elite with a democratic width in the base of selection. Further on, the totalitarian state we're talking about, it crushes individual liberty. The periodical purges, which it organizes against the political opponents and army journals or other powerful syndicates, are illustrative of this fact. And we saw that in fascism and Nazism, they do not believe in the common man at all. They regarded the conception of individual liberty as a fetish of the past, and totalitarianism tolerates no political opposition. It is government by one party. So whatever criticism is allowed, it is within the party. And in criticism, and in this criticizing, the aim should be to make the existing machinery work better, not to overthrow it under any circumstances. So the totalitarian state allows no liberty of thought, no liberty of speech, no liberty of writing articles against it. So severe censorship is exercised over the press, publication of books, radio, then moving public industry, theater, music, art, and presently social media, if it happens to be there at the time. So there is no liberty of meeting or liberty of association. Strikes were forbidden in fascist Italy. In Italy and Germany, professors and schoolmasters were shifted and rustified, and the school was used for political propaganda purposes. State centralization took the place of local life. The civil service, judiciary, and army and university were purged of all anti-national enemies, as they used to call all those who were loyal to the previous regime or to the plural or multicultural society. They were called as anti-nationals. So the president in Germany were appointed by the will of the people was not there, but then university president were appointed by the will of the dictator himself. So no criticism of that regime was permitted in the press. So leading Italian intellectuals were killed, imprisoned, or exiled at the time, and the mysterious disappearance of Metotti in Italian in 1924 and the execution of Rohm and his group in Germany in 1934 are too well known to require any comment here. So according to totalitarianism, ideas are more dangerous than actions, and the totalitarian state completely swallows up the individual. Individual has absolutely no right against the state. Further on, we find this kind of state glorifies the nation and emphasizes the idea of the state as a power system. Narrow nationalism, chauvinisms, then aggressive warfare and imperialistic expansion are some of the essential features of fascism and Nazism. According to fascism, international peace is a coward's dream, and pacifists, they act as a cowards in the face of sacrifice. So fascists exploit the nationalist sentiments. They exaggerate and distort the internationalism of the socialist and communist. So fascist Italian education was chauvinistic to the highest degree, and the schools were conducted under a system of drill and discipline, military units in character. So force and violence were extolled. The man of action was praised rather than the thinker. So these states, they wanted colonies for expansion and raw materials and for the sale of their manufactured goods, as well as for the satisfaction of their will to power. Now Mussolini said, imperialism is the external and immutable law of life. So we are 40 million squeezed into our narrow but adorable peninsula. So Italian expansion, said Mussolini, was a matter of life and death. So Italy must expand or perish. I mean, that kind of hysteria was created among the minds of the people, and Mussolini and Hitler openly preached the necessity of war. So they do have imperialistic designs, and it was necessary for the development of manly qualities. That is what they made people and masses to believe. So fascism chose an internal involved war and an external consequences. And that is what they wanted. So the totalitarian state is also, it's exclusive. It does not believe in liberalism, does not believe in humanitarianism. So Germany built up strong race prejudices and hatred. It believed that their race was the best of all, although science gives us no conclusive evidence of any kind of racial superiority. So while probably only less than half of the German population was Nordic at the time, but then they all treated themselves or considered themselves as pure Aryan race, and that was the aim of Nazism. So Nazis, they strove to safeguard the purity of the language, literature, and race, and that is what totalitarian state they try to impress upon the people. So this is exclusive in nature. It's a, and further in the sense of trying to make itself economically self-sufficient. The economic policy of both, and especially the totalitarian regime, is to make themselves as little dependent on others as possible, especially the foreign countries against whom they have designs. So the foreign countries, for the supply of any material required for the prosecution of war. So in pursuit of this policy, we find that Germany produced considerable quantities of ethnic wool, cotton, rubber. So as a steel, sorry, I beg your pardon, as a state, she entered the field of foreign trade and commerce with a view to push forward the sale of her finished goods. Then the totalitarian state becomes a rival of religion itself. While fascism made religion a tool of totalitarian state, Nazism particularly bade men give in to Caesar. It convinced man to give unto Caesar that which belonged to God. So it was out to establish a narrow, exclusive, and un-Christian Christianity known as Nordic Christianity. So whatever in the Bible, in the teaching of Jesus and the Christian tradition, did not fit into the Nordic ideology was thrown overboard. So Hitler was considered as a new savior. So leaders are generally considered in a totalitarian state as the saviors. So they are considered as messiahs, or God's direct representative upon the earth. So totalitarian state is basically an enemy of totalitarian religion, which somehow tries to challenge that. So in such state of totalitarianism, all kind of dictatorial states, it becomes a mass movement. So in the absence of a free vote, it is difficult to say how far this totalitarianism is based on genuine popular support. But we can consider, to start with, that the totalitarian ideas and dictatorial methods were confined to a few and were even scoffed off by many. But by grim determination and resolute purpose, this handful of well-organized and well-disciplined members of such a group, having a very clear idea of their political and national objective, they succeed in placing themselves at the helm of affairs. Not only that, they managed to win the solid support of the masses on one reason or other. So in winning this support, especially in Italy and Germany, we saw the knowledge of mass psychology and practice of direct action and of terrorism played a notable part. In Germany and Italy, the passion of hatred and vengeance, the bogey of communism, and the wonderful opportunity of conquering far-flung empires, which it was supposed would place the people above want and give them plenty of room to expand, all these were used in winning popular support. So appeals are made not to reason, but to the baser passion of man, with the result that the masses obeyed the behest of the state in a blind and blessed manner. And that blindness is mechanical at terms. So they were drilled and disciplined so thoroughly that they rushed to the battlefield and the conquest of the people's territory, or conquest of other people's territory, like a swarm of locusts driven to action by some blind, unreasoning instinct. So if you try to analyze and try to find out how this totalitarian state comes into existence, or what are the reasons responsible for its rise, we can see one cannot understand this concept of state without analyzing the forces and situation which made it possible. And that is what we try to find it out now. Like, what were the reasons responsible for the rise of totalitarian state in Italy and France after First World War? We find that the totalitarian state has to be seen as a reaction against the skepticism, relativism, and historicism characteristic for the modern democracy of those days and our days. So modern democracies are connected with their origin as opposition against the absolute state. They believe on the one hand that the individual is able to decide on a political affairs, and they have the opinion on the other hand that the rights of the political power against the individual have to be limited. Now that's how the skepticism is generated, feeling of doubt is created, and if these beliefs and opinions are somehow dissolved, the fundamentals of modern democracy are put in danger. So it continues to exist as a system to which one is accustomed. So because it has become a tradition and there seems to exist no other alternative. And if historicism, relativism, and skepticism, they describe every political order as a regime of specific interest, and every idea as ideology of particular pressure group, dangerous tendencies originate to replace beliefs in compromises with the help of the peaceful negotiations by longing to obtain clear solutions during decisions from above. So this relativism, it gives that no absolute truth exists against which their truth has to be contrasted and understood. It is told that what you believe in, what you're told from above, is the ultimate truth that one should stick to. So the totalitarian state in Western Europe has to be characterized as a product of fatigue, and after the period of individualistic belief in everything is possible, follow the period of collective disbelief in everything is possible from above. Now that kind of a belief in the common objective forms no longer exist. Everything can be accepted. So actual success efficiency then is the decision criterion. So efficiency is no longer connected, as the old utilitarian said, with the interest of the individuals, but with the interest of the group, powerful and skillful enough to appear as necessarily representative of the collectivity. Now, further, we see one has to understand the totalitarian state as a reaction against the dissolution of political unity. So, in Russia at the time, we found the Bolshevik party led to accelerate the march towards complete anarchy started during the war. So, after the abdication of Tsar, in order to be finally the single organized and disciplined group in the universal chaos, the totalitarian state was realized in Italy and Germany as a reaction against the lack of unity and cooperation between different parties and groups. So the system of basing a democracy on balance between different groups, preventing each other from becoming too powerful, cannot work if the most elementary security and stability are no longer existing. Then the character of the totalitarian state as a reaction against individualistic dissolution is demonstrated also by its reaction to the technical progress. Now, technical progress is natural towards ideas. Now, it generally remains neutral towards any idea that the technical progress especially. So it is completely wrong to bring reason and technical progress in continuous necessary connection. So technical progress can be in the service of most different aims and can be connected with rigorous in wisdom and culture, though originally it was based on real progress in knowledge. So the totalitarian state can be more useful for technical progress than the modern democracies. Now, these tendencies towards maximum increase and intensity of power connection, they favor technical rationality. No longer it checks the limits on traditional and modern barriers. So one of the most important features of the totalitarian state is that it applies the most perfect and modern techniques, methods to political life. Now, the perfect propaganda techniques of totalitarian state consist not only in the play of an adversary against the other, but in a combination of the most intensive and embracing war preparations with the loudest of peace promises. I mean, truth is mixed with falsifications at one or the other stage to propagate their ideology and somehow brainwash the people into believing what they believe in. So now the disappointment which is produced by the humanitarian nationalism and the Marxian totalitarianism has aroused belief in the new unity. Now one here no longer emphasized liberty of the individual, but the order embracing the individual. So the new center of life is the totalitarian nation. It differs from 18th and 19th century nationalism in that it rises not in opposition to absolutist and authoritarian state, but against the modern democracy. So metaphysics and religion are judged according to the usefulness for the nationalistic center. So here the rationalistic belief in the unity of human race that disappears. And the national power, justified as power of the superior race or nation, pushes the question of unity of humanity into background. So the new nationalism that emerges in the 19th century at that time, which emerged, was not interested in the economic rights of the individual, but in using economics as a means to increase power. So politics and religion are basically the amalgamation, but the determining factor in this amalgamation is the power politics. So what we saw in the rise of the totalitarian state, that in case we see what it has achieved, we find it united the people and promoted the national solidarity. So totalitarianism in Nazi Germany and fascist Italy did some good things for the people, but it was at the expense of their freedom and the expense of the humanity in general. So it meant an iron discipline, military might, and war. Whatever prosperity there was short-lived, have been based on false premises. So today, under democratic regimes, West Germany and Italy have made much more economic progress, far greater than the progress under their dictators. So although such regimes in these countries, they have been defeated, but there is no guarantee that it may not come up again if the situation do not favor them. Now, how an intelligent intellectual people like Germans could have given themselves to this ideology and dictatorship, no, it remains a mystery. Now, what the success of totalitarianism indicates is that there is a craving inside a man to follow a leadership, an authority as well as for action. Now, if this desire is to be directed along right channels, it needs to be corrected and limited by other desires to develop one's own resources of self-help and self-direction. Definitely, better results can be achieved in the progress of humanity in general. So, with that, I come to the end of this lecture on totalitarian state, its nature, its rise, and what are its meaning and its forms. And I'll talk about the totalitarian state of fascist and Nazi type in my next lecture with all its principles and its philosophy. So thanks for watching and listening to this video. Thank you very much. Thank you.